My name is Sarah, and I work remotely with my husband, John. We love the flexibility of working from home, enjoying breaks whenever we wanted. But everything changed when my mother-in-law moved in. Although we were financially stable, she constantly questioned why we weren't going out to work. Every time she brought it up, frustration built inside me. No matter how much we explained, she just didn't get it. Convinced we were wasting our lives, she often sighed, saying she should have gone to live with Mark, John's brother, who had married a wealthy woman named Emily. But we knew the truth. Mark wasn't coming for her. He was too busy enjoying his rich wife's fortune. Still, she clung to the hope that Mark would take her to his luxurious home, secretly dreaming it would one day be hers. But deep down, we knew she wasn't going anywhere. John had already made it clear she could stay with us, while Mark had firmly shut his doors to her. So, despite the judgment, we continued living together, labeled as unemployed just because we worked remotely. It was frustrating, but we endured it. Then, out of nowhere, Mark called. "I'll be coming over this weekend," he said, hanging up before we could respond. John and I exchanged confused glances, but my mother-in-law, she was ecstatic. "He's coming to take me. Help me pack," she exclaimed, pulling John toward her room. John tried to reason with her. "He didn't say anything about taking you," he pointed out. "He didn't have to. He's obviously coming for me," she insisted, her excitement unwavering. We couldn't understand her confidence. Since moving in, she had done whatever she pleased, never lifting a finger around the house, relying entirely on our financial support. But we didn't want to argue. If she was set on leaving, we would help her pack. When Mark and Emily arrived that weekend, something felt off. They were acting suspiciously nice. My mother-in-law beamed with joy, immediately complaining about how terribly we treated her. "You guys aren't mistreating Mum, right?" Mark asked, though his tone suggested he had already made up his mind. "We take care of her," John said, exasperated. "She has everything she needs. Sarah even handles all the housework." Mark shook his head. "John has always been clueless. He's probably treating Mom poorly without realizing it," he said, casting a glance at his wife. "And Sarah, she doesn't seem like the considerate type." John and I frowned. We had been nothing but accommodating. Yet here we were, sitting across from people who had already decided we were the villains. Still, we held our tongues and led them to the living room. The air was thick with unspoken tension as we took our seats, John and I on one side, Mark and Emily on the other. Something told me this conversation was about to take a turn. "What are you sitting around for? Serve the tea," my mother-in-law demanded. "I thought you were going to make the tea, Mother," I replied, making an old woman work. "You see, Mark, Sarah is this kind of person," she said, even faked crying. I was too stunned by her behavior to argue back. After I served the tea, Mark and his wife became serious. "The truth is, we sold our house," Mark said. John and I were shocked, and my mother-in-law was the most surprised. "Why would you do something like that? Didn't you come to pick me up?" she asked, flustered. Mark tried to calm her down, explaining that they were in debt and needed a place to stay temporarily. "What debt?" my mother-in-law asked. "I was trying to start a business, but it didn't go well," Mark explained, laughing nervously. John and I sighed, feeling exasperated. "We only need to stay until we find a new house. Please, we have nowhere else to turn," Mark pleaded. Feeling a bit conflicted, we agreed to let them stay temporarily but made them promise to leave within a month. "Got it," Mark said, still laughing nervously as they went back to prepare to move their things. After Mark and his wife left, my mother-in-law sat silently looking thoughtful. We assumed she was still in shock. The next day, their belongings arrived promptly. "We have so much stuff. Where should we put it all? We might have to sell some or rent a locker," we discussed while moving Mark's things. Suddenly, my mother-in-law dropped a bombshell. "I've been thinking, wouldn't we be more secure in the future if Mark's here? So you freeloaders can leave, can't you?" she said abruptly. My husband and I were taken aback by her sudden demand. "If you insist, I can tolerate John staying, but I don't need a wife who can't do anything. Get a divorce then. The space that Sarah was occupying can be used for all these packages." she eagerly suggested, looking at my husband for agreement. What are you talking about? He reacted, astounded as usual. Then my brother-in-law and his wife arrived. My mother-in-law greeted them joyfully, but I was still shaken by her earlier words. Despite this, my husband decided to ignore them for the moment and asked his brother to deal with the packages. There are more than I thought. Try to reduce the number. Rent a locker. Or sell some if you have to. My husband suggested, but his brother didn't like the idea. These are important packages. How could I sell them? What if someone steals them from a locker or they get damaged? Are you going to take responsibility, bro? He retorted. My husband shook his head, disappointed by his brother's selfishness. This is our house. You know, it's only natural that you should endure some inconvenience. If you don't like it, find a place to live quickly and leave, my husband asserted. At that moment, my mother-in-law interrupted, shouting, What are you talking about? Didn't I just say if you two are not happy with Mark and the rest, you can leave? You're basically freeloaders. You're not needed in this house. Mark is trying to start a business, and all you two do is loaf around the house doing so-called remote work. You're a nuisance. My husband and I looked at each other in disbelief, while my brother-in-law and his wife were surprised by my mother-in-law's words. But then they started to smirk. That might not be a bad idea, Mark said. Mum, that's a good idea. Yeah, it's a hassle to look for a place, so we could live here. So sell this house to us. Right, Emily? I feel uncomfortable with you two around, so it would be helpful if you sold this place to us. Plus it seems like our mother-in-law is on our side, so sell this place to us. Emily chimed in. My husband and I were dumbfounded at their words. What nonsense are you? My husband began but was interrupted by my mother-in-law, who gloated. See, both Mark and Emily are saying the same thing. So what will you do, John? If you're going to divorce, you can stay here, she said, glaring at me triumphantly. I braced myself to retaliate, but my husband spoke first. No, you just say whatever you want. Why does Sarah have to leave? He said, his face red with anger, raising his voice. Don't shout like that. It's better without a burden around, isn't it? My mother-in-law retorted. Then my husband responded in an exasperated tone. You don't understand anything. This is Sarah's house. At my husband's words, my mother-in-law, brother-in-law, and his wife gasped. My husband continued, adding to the tension. This is the house that Sarah bought for our life together. What? What are you saying? Isn't it the husband's job to buy the house? There's no such rule. Moreover, Sarah covers all of Mom's allowance and living expenses. Sarah said she'd take on that burden because your pension is minimal, and it would be difficult for you to have financial freedom with just that, John explained, glaring at his mother-in-law with an intense expression. Despite this, my mother-in-law was defiant. Black J. We've not used any of Mom's pensions since she moved in here. If Mom ever wanted to leave, Sarah has been managing it so she could live independently. But instead, Mum, you've been bossing Sarah around, interfering with her work. You're the problem. If you don't like Sarah, you should leave right now, John asserted. I don't believe any of this. My mother-in-law insisted. We don't mind if you and Mark temporarily stay, but some patience should be expected. We didn't want you to live here in the first place. We only agreed because you begged us, John said, glaring at Mark and his wife. Mark and his wife broke out in a cold sweat. Not used to John raising his voice. Just kidding. But you sure are earning a lot, huh? I wish you could teach me some business tricks. Right, Emily? John said, lightening the mood. While it's true we were worried about living with our sister-in-law, it seems like she's a good person after all. Mark and his wife smiled at each other, but my mother-in-law was unyielding. Don't act so high and mighty. You're just a bum. Enough, John. You should leave too. You should go outside and see how harsh this world can be. My mother-in-law filled with conviction, refusing to listen to anything we said afterward. John and I sighed in disbelief. Interrupting her, I said, well, if that's how you feel, we'll pack our things and move to a new house. You guys will be stuck with a mortgage. But if that's okay with you, don't come crying to us for help. If you insist mother-in-law will leave, even with a pension maintaining your lifestyle will be challenging. But I guess that can't be helped, can it? At our words, my mother-in-law turned beet red and yelled at us to get out. Wait. You can't be serious. We don't have to do that, do we? We protested. Yes. If you two are here, we're safe. Kevin and his wife tried to stop us, but my mother-in-law gave us a fierce look and said, "Don't you dare talk back. Kevin, you're going to be a CEO, aren't you? I don't mind you using my pension, so just start a company and show us how successful you can become. I'll show you what happens when you defy us." My mother-in-law's words were filled with intensity. Hearing this, we decided it was best to no longer get involved with her or Mark's family and left the house. Of course, the mortgage on the house remained, but we changed the ownership to Mark's name. Some time had passed since then. While there was some residual dissatisfaction from that incident, having been free from my mother-in-law's sarcasm, we had resumed our normal routine. Just when we were working from home in our new apartment, as usual, my mother-in-law called my husband crying, "Mark has taken my pension and disappeared. He hasn't come back in a week. Emily and I are left alone in the house and we're in trouble. Please help us." She wept. After my husband calmed my mother-in-law, he asked why Mark had gone missing. I gave all of my pension to Mark for his startup, but he ended up spending it all on gambling. When I confronted him about it, he disappeared. She cried out desperately. Since my mother-in-law couldn't continue the conversation through her sobbing, the phone was handed to Emily. "Could you please call us back? We can't live like this. Ever since Mark failed his startup and sold the house we were living in, our parents have disowned us. My dad won't forgive us for selling that house. We haven't been able to reach either our dad or mom since." Carol pleaded with my husband. At the sight of them, my husband muttered, "I knew it," in a disgusted tone. "That's unfortunate, but don't involve us. We warned you when we left, didn't we? Even if you come crying to us, we won't help you. You can report Mark as missing to the police. It's none of our business," he said, and then hung up. I was shocked, but my husband said they got what they deserved, and I agreed. After that, they called my husband's cell phone many times. When my husband, frustrated, answered the phone, Emily would cry about not knowing how to report Mark as missing. We were surprised she didn't know and gave her advice to call the police. However, they still couldn't find Mark. Just when we thought they might not find him, we heard that Mark had been arrested for bank robbery in another state. Apparently, he did it to repay his debt. It seems it wasn't his first offense, and he would likely face actual jail time. Emily can't go back to her parents' home and is still living with my mother-in-law in that house. It's uncertain whether or not she will divorce Mark. That's probably the least of her concerns right now. She registered with a temp agency and is struggling with her first job ever, but she's somehow making ends meet every day. As for my mother-in-law, Mark took all of her pension, and now she has to repay his debt. She has also started working part-time to repay the debt. My husband and I expressed sympathy for my mother-in-law and sister-in-law's family, but we have made it clear that we have no intention of helping them, and we have cut off all communication. They must be tasting the hard realities of life that my mother-in-law always talked about. Despite the changes since my mother-in-law moved in with us, my husband and I are glad that we have returned to our peaceful days.